In this video, we'll be talking about the basics of Maya, mostly its user interface. So the first thing I want to talk about is the menu across the top. The menu has lots of various functions that are critical to Maya depending on what menu set you're currently in. So the first 7 or so are pretty common, file, edit, create, and they have various functions throughout Maya. But the second half of these, like mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, these might not always be there. Maya is such a big program that they have to break down the menu into multiple what we call menu sets. The menu sets is located right here. It's this little downward pointing chevron, and it has different rollout sections of different kinds of menu sets that you can choose from. So by default you should be on modeling, but if I were to change this over to rigging, you will see that the menus across the top, the ones on the right, will change. So if I change this to rigging, we will see everything past window change. We have skeleton, skin, deform, etc. If I go back to modeling, the other ones come back. So there are so many tools in the program that they had to break it up like this. So if I say something, go to such and such menu, and you do not see it there, one of the first things you should check is to make sure we're in the same menu set as the video. So if we're talking about modeling, be sure that double check that you're in modeling. Now, if we keep going on the second bar here, we have various icons to popular functions in Maya, such as new, open, save, undo, redo. A lot of these have corresponding quick keys. I'm not going to talk about these right now. Right here are the render settings, which will probably come into another lecture, but most of these things we can skip for right now. Next thing below this is the icon tabs of various tools in the program. These tools are the exact same that you find in the menus. I generally do not use these as an instructor just because it's harder to describe to go to such and such icons. But for the most part, I will go through the menus. But if you discover certain of these icons of certain tools that you like and you want to go through these icons instead, that is perfectly fine. Now, the next section down here on the left hand side, we have the toolbox and view settings. So we have the toolbox, which has your most basic tools. We come into our main window, which currently we are in what's called the perspective camera. And you can kind of tell which camera you're always in by looking at the very bottom of that window. You'll see some white text, and this is written in shorthand. PRSP stands for perspective. On the right hand side, we have generally, by default, docked on the right hand side, we have very common displays of currently items that are currently selected. Right now there's nothing in this scene, so it's empty, but this is called the channel box, and it's highlighted. This icon up here, little paper icon, denotes that this is the channel box. So you can click on and off this to turn this on and off, but honestly I leave the channel box open for the most part, and it has a list format of all the attributes of that particular object that's currently selected. They also have these tabs on the right hand side, which I actually like a bit better, that list in words channel box / layer editor on its side. And the next one is modeling toolkit. The next one is attribute editor. So the channel box is perhaps the most common one you'll use in the class, but you can also find other attributes of an object selected by clicking on attribute editor and modeling toolkit and channel box, and you can see how these change. But right now we don't have anything selected, so there's nothing there to show. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the viewport. The rest of the stuff we can ignore down at the bottom. That's for animation. We'll get to there later. But in the viewport, this is your perspective view, and this is a 3D view of your world in your scene. In this view, you commonly have a grid. This grid denotes generally the center of the scene. However, you can have things extend practically infinitely in any direction. This is just kind of the center of the scene. So this grid kind of denotes a ground plane, and you can move this around by using the Alt key and one of your 3 mice buttons. So holding down the Alt button and then also holding down the left mouse button will tumble the camera. So I'm holding down both those keys, Alt and left mouse, and I can tumble the camera. Fancy word for rotate. If I hold down Alt and middle mouse, use the middle mouse as a button, you can pan the camera. So we can pan the camera around as such. If I hold down Alt and right mouse, click and hold, I can dolly the camera. This is not the same as zooming the camera. They are slightly different. This is physically, in the digital world at least, moving the camera closer or farther away from whatever that you're doing this from. So again, you need a three mouse button, and everything's done with Alt and pressing and holding one of your three mouse buttons. So I'm holding down Alt left mouse, Alt middle mouse, and Alt right mouse. Now, the main interface here can be changed quite easily. There's a lot of customization that we can do to this. But one of the quickest views, and I'm a big fan of my quick keys, one of the quickest ways to change this view is to switch this from a full view to a 4-screen split view. And to do that, you tap the spacebar. And it's critical that you only tap the spacebar, because if you hold it down, you get a different menu. If I hold it down, for an example here, you get something called a marking menu. We don't want that, at least not yet. So make sure you tap the spacebar, and you will get a 4-screen view. So this is your typical 4-screen view. You can see my perspective moved up to my top right form. And the other three cameras here are all orthographic views. I have a top view, and again I'm looking at the very bottom of the view to show the words there. It says top Y, front, and side. So this brings us up to an interesting point. Why does it say top Y, front Z, side X? Well, in Maya, it uses the XYZ coordinates to showcase the direction in the 3D world. If I go back to this perspective view, and I can rotate in this view right here, you can see down here, if I look down here, we have this little, what we call a gnomon, manipulator right here that is changing based on how my screen is tumbled around. Now in Maya, and this is different in other programs, X is typically left and right, Y is up and down, and Z is back and forth. And I will go over that again when we have an object here, but that's why we see top Y, because it's up and down, front Z, forward, and side is X. So if you want to go back to a full screen, we can always just tap the spacebar to go back to another full screen. And it's interesting how Maya does this because it's context sensitive. Wherever your mouse is, you can tap the spacebar and make that a full screen. So if I tap spacebar over here, it'll make the top view a full screen. Tap spacebar again, back to the 4 screen. Move my mouse over here, tap the spacebar, and I'm back to full screen and perspective. So you can quickly switch between a 4 view and a full view of any one of these views by tapping the spacebar. And again, all that matters is wherever your mouse is located. So in the next lesson, we'll talk about how to create a simple object and talk more about the 3D world space. See you then.